Hi, I'm Jen, and I just wanted to take a moment to remind you that this podcast deals with the hard stuff in life. We share stories of trauma and triumph, and the subject matter may be alarming to some listeners. Please check the show notes for content warnings and take care of yourself. If you want to further support what we're doing, please check out our Patreon at patreon.com/nowwhatpod. You're listening to Now What, a podcast where we celebrate the human spirit by sharing stories of strength and resilience.
For those going through hard times or looking to get inspired to change their own life, we're your hosts, Jen and Tesha.
Hi, I'm Jen. Welcome back to Now What.
It's Tesha here, and we are being joined today by the one and only Randi Ramdeen. And Randi is someone who I've known for quite a while. And when we were thinking about doing this podcast, I thought of Randi because she just lives her life with so much passion and such integrity that you don't get there without having gone through some hard times. And I knew she had a story to share. And so I invited her to be on the show, and we're both so thankful that she agreed to be here with us today. So without any further ado, Randi, how are you?
Welcome. Well, wow. Thank you for that introduction. You got me a little choked up there.
She's good at it, huh?
Yeah, totally. Like right off the bat. Like, woo. Thank you so much for having me on. I was really excited when you told me about this, and I obviously had to be a part of it. So
we're really thankful to have you here. And obviously we all get on very well because we had a very long pre-interview conversation and even before we started this.
Exactly. So it feels comfortable. I'm good with it. I'm good with it.
That's what we like.
Yeah. Well, I'll start with kind of, where things started for me. I grew up in a small town, a population 5,000. I was my family was one of very few people of color because it was primarily a small white town, and there was a lot of racism in there. So I experienced that pretty early. When I was my first experience, I was about 3 years old, and a little boy called me a black lab, and I knew his intention behind his words were stronger than what I really understood. And when I said that I was going to tell the teacher, he knew that what he meant was stronger than those words as well. And he said, no, it's just a dog. It's just an animal. But very interestingly enough, he knew it was more harmful. Those specific words were more harmful than just calling me an animal. And so, throughout the years, I experienced being called different names, the N-word. I was called Packy regularly. I remember being in elementary school. So this was before grade 3. So it was JK to grade 3. Kids would make fun of my lunch, the smell of my lunch, even though, I had like a ham sandwich or like my father didn't cook curry or anything ever. My father, my background is my father is West Indian and my mother is white Irish. So my father never cooked any curries or anything that had a strong scent or like ethnic, I'm quotations right now.
Air quotes
right now. Any strong scented foods. So it was just based on what they physically knew about me, and obviously what they learned growing up or what they learned, at home. Exactly. Incidentally with each other, like there was going to be a kid who heard that one kid call me that name, and then there was going to be, a ripple effect, right? That's just the nature of learning, peer learning, right? It's good sometimes and it's bad sometimes. And so it made me really uncomfortable because they would make fun of my food all the time. And so my father eventually would come pick me up for lunchtimes, and we didn't have a car. So he would have to walk to my school, pick me up, walk home, make me lunch, walk back, and that would happen every single day. And then another big thing that happened to me when I was in primary school still was I was playing on it was in a schoolyard, and there's a play structure in the swings, and I was with two of my friends who are white, and they were swinging on the swings, and I decided I wanted to climb on the play structure. And as I was climbing, something hit me in the back of the head, and I turned around, and these kids were throwing rocks and garbage at me coming onto the playground, and started calling me names. And I remember getting hit with a banana peel. And I was small enough at this time that I was able to crawl under the play structure and hide away from them. And they couldn't reach me. Thankfully, they couldn't reach me, but they tried to get at me, and they were screaming and whatnot. And then eventually they gave up and left. And so I came out, and I walked over to my friends who were basically, I don't know if unaware is the word, but they were they were definitely unfazed. Yes, unfazed and unscathed, because they weren't the ones being targeted.
Right.
And I just was kind of like, whoa, that was weird. You know, like racism hadn't like, because I was sort of in survival mode, or I was in survival mode as a kid, it never really registered to me. It didn't penetrate me deep enough to be affected by it, because I was just trying to get through it. And so I was like, woof, that was weird, or that was crazy. And they just kind of agreed. And then the kids came back, and they chased us down the street to my friend's house. And we ran inside and locked the doors, and they came and started banging on the windows and the doors.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah. And luckily her older sister was there with her newborn. And if she hadn't threatened them with calling the cops, they wouldn't have left. Who knows if they would have, gotten inside. I have no idea. I can't assume to, I don't want to wonder what could have happened. So, but yeah. And so because of all of that experience, and that went on. So I was 8 years old when that happened, and that went on, like racist comments and whatnot went on into high school. And so because of all of this, I learned very, very quickly to survive. School wasn't my first priority. It was surviving. It was getting along with people. It was building people who could potentially protect me if I needed to. So school became not even a priority. And so I was, not a great student because of it. And I remember being labeled as a troublemaker from my teachers, because I wasn't focused on academics. I was focused on the relationships that I had within the school setting. And I remember some schoolmates saying to a couple of my friends, "Oh, she's just here to socialize. Why is she even here?" And it was really tough, because that made me feel really dumb as well. It made me feel like I wasn't good in school. And so it affected my motivations and my potential to be something.
Yeah.
And so I just realized that Prescott wasn't the place for me anymore. And I moved to Toronto, and it was night and day. I was finally around people, and I lived north, so there were a lot of brown people just like me. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, this is a breath of fresh air. People look like me. I don't have to worry about my food smelling.
Even when it's a ham sandwich.
Even when it's a ham sandwich. People look just like me. And so I slowly began to like immerse myself in different cultures, and because I didn't want to react or respond to or think of people with preconceptions the way other people did for me. And so, living in Toronto, getting to know other people, getting to know cultures, immersed in other cultures, I started to focus on activism and human rights and animal rights. I became vegan, vegetarian. I was vegetarian when I was 24, and then I became vegan at 33. So it's been just over 8 years since I became vegan. So fighting for human animal rights, the planet, it all just came into play for me, of like doing my absolute best I can for the world we live in. And so that activism led to like anti-racism work. And that was kind of where it all started to decline for me. When I was now in a place where I could feel safer.
You're not just surviving anymore.
Exactly. I'm no longer in survival mode. I've now built an incredible support network where I can fall apart if I need to fall apart, because they are there to protect me. Like this is what I tried to work for back home, but I didn't get it because they didn't get it, unfortunately.
Right.
So I was now in the city where there were like-minded people, and I built that community up, and I was able to now sit and reflect on all of the crappy things that I had gone through in my life. And so that's when things started to decline for me mentally. Like probably I'd say for the last 10 years, I'd been doing the work. For the last, let's say, 3 years, it started to decline, or the previous 3 years, it started to decline. I had experienced bouts of depression here and there, or low experiences of my life a bunch of times, like maybe 3 times throughout my life. But this was a whole different level, and I was completely not equipped to handle the feelings that were coming up surrounding racism. And at this time, I was dating someone who ended up not being very supportive of that, me coming into that understanding. You know, I challenged her on some things that she said that were problematic. And she said to me once, you know, why does everything have to be about race with you? And it just, it cut me really, really deep, because besides being a female walking down the street, that's the first thing people see of me. And that's what I've always been attacked on. And so I'm like, because that's what it is for me. That's something I can't hide. That's why it is about race with me, and it'll always be about race with me.
Well, because from a young age, it was forced to, like, people made it be about race.
Exactly. Absolutely. Exactly. Thank you for pointing that out. And so, but then she gaslit me and said, well, I never said that. And you're remembering things incorrectly. And I told her I wanted her to get sensitivity training. And she said, no, I'm a really nice person.
Which may be true.
Yeah, it is. The thing is, you know, in certain situations, she is a very nice person.
Right.
But it doesn't exclude her from racism and from problematic thoughts and problematic behaviors. And so that was really, really difficult for me to handle, because this is supposed to be someone who I feel my safest with, and I feel protected by, and I didn't feel safe with her, and I didn't feel protected by her. And at the same time, you know, I was very active on social media and in real life when it came to anti-racism. And you might remember this, there was the whole Don Cherry thing. The whole Don Cherry thing happened, and it became a huge deal. And I was seeing things being posted about how it wasn't racist, and I couldn't withdraw. Like I had to say something. And so I made a couple of big posts about it, and about how it was problematic, and how telling people of color that it wasn't racist is extremely harmful to them, and that you're not acknowledging their expertise and lived experience of what racism is. And I will always believe that while people of color or BIPOC people, while they may not always know what racism isn't, we always know what racism is. You feel it within your bones. You feel it in your gut. And what I mean by what it isn't is, there were times where, you know, I would say to my friends would say, I'm not racist, am I? And I'm like, no, you're friends with me. But I was younger and I didn't quite realize that.
But that doesn't preclude them from having prejudices.
Exactly, of course.
Well, yeah,
and
we
it
all
means they
bias.
accept you despite perhaps what they think.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And like, just because you have a person of color as a friend doesn't mean doesn't exempt you from racism. So,
and I think, you know, so often too, like people, have these prejudices, but then they have their one friend who's a person of color. And so that makes them not a racist. But sometimes their thought process is actually like, well, I think this about people of color, but my friend is an exemption from that. Mm-hmm. So the racist thoughts are still there, but they're exempting it from their partner or their one friend or their one coworker or whatever is like exempt from what they think, as opposed to being like, oh, maybe what I've thought all this time isn't true.
Yes, exactly. And that's the thing. Like I've had to explain that or I've tried to explain that you're right, Jen. Like we all have biases. We all have prejudices. Every single one of us were conditioned in a white supremacist society. And to say that we were not affected by that would be ludicrous. Like even me, I as a light-skinned person of color have had so many privileges because I'm lighter skinned. That's just a society we have been conditioned in. Yeah. And to deny that you could be affected by that is just, it's so strange to me because.
Well, it's strange that because being racist or saying something that's racist or like it's something that's affecting somebody else. So for me as a white person to say I'm not racist, it's like, but it's not affecting me whether I am or not. So how can I actually say that?
Right.
You don't really get to be the judge of that.
Yeah,
right.
That's it. I can't as a white person, you don't get to be the judge of if you're behaving in a racist manner or not.
Right. Right.
I don't think.
No, I mean, that's
with anything, people are entitled to have their feelings, right? Like if someone says I'm feeling sad, you don't have a right to say, well, you're not allowed to feel sad. Mm-hmm. You're not sad. You're like, but I am.
But I am sad.
Like you don't get to tell people what their feelings are and what their experiences are, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we totally got off topic there a little bit, but it's such an important point I think you're making, that we all live in this society, and racism is systemic.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you can admit that, then you have to also be able to admit that it impacts you regardless of what color you are.
Yeah,
you're affected. We're all affected by it in the way that we're taught to think about race.
And once you begin to admit those things, you can start to be better. You know what I mean? So I remember when she said, no, I'm not doing, my ex, when she said she's not doing the anti-racism training, I just thought, like, why would you not want to be better for your partner? Why would you not want to understand your partner better and navigate this world a little bit easier with her? It was pretty disappointing. And so I was saying at the same time I was active on social media and, you know, posted these things about Don Cherry, and a family member of mine text messaged me and just laid into me about how I was wrong and how I made her feel racist by my post to all of Facebook world, and was just so clueless is the word. Very, very clueless to how her words impacted me.
And that's a family member, again, who you think is supposed to support you. Right? That telling you your thoughts and your feelings are invalid.
Yeah. And that's when the decline started to happen even more, because it was this family member. So I had now had my partner and now this very close family member tell me that my feelings were invalid and basically to just get over it.
Like that's such a betrayal from two people that you can never be prepared to expect that from.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why it hit me so deeply. Like, I explained it as being like cut by a knife, because the scars from that were really, they were big scars.
Yeah, because you're trying to build this sort of inner circle where you feel safe.
Yeah, it was really, really hard. And that's why at that point, my mental health really started to to decline. Like I started getting sick a lot, and I started getting really depressed. And I remember one day I was sitting on my couch with my partner, and I just kind of rubbing my hands through my hair. And all of a sudden I felt this little patch and I said, oh my gosh, I think I have a bald patch. And I said, can you check it? And her reaction, I could tell that she was like, you don't have a bald patch. She wasn't taking what I was saying seriously. And then she stood up and checked it, and she's like, oh my gosh, you actually do have a bald patch. And my anxiety went through the roof, because it was alopecia areata. And if you know anything about alopecia areata, Tesha, I know you know it.
Yeah, my sister has it.
Yeah. Yeah. Your hair falls out from stress. And in big, like mine just kept growing and growing and growing. And I was, the more stressed I got, the bigger my hair, the bigger the patch was. And I couldn't manage that. It was impossible for me to de-stress so my hair wouldn't fall out when my hair kept falling out.
The act of your hair falling out alone has got to be stressful.
Exactly. And it just kept getting bigger and bigger. Now, granted, I was going through a couple of other things at this time that also contributed hugely to my stress levels, like workplace bullying. That'll be another podcast. But yeah, so I just felt completely lost. And then the pandemic happened, and my partner pieced out. My partner decided she was going to leave, and she didn't have a return date. But through this all, my mental health got so bad that I didn't want to live this life anymore. And I felt really, really desperate. And I told two people. I told one of my very best friends, who she said all the right things to me, which is, I'm going to be here for you no matter what. And then I told my partner before she left, before I knew she was leaving. And she said I was trying to manipulate her in however way I was trying to manipulate her, by telling her that that's how I was feeling. And she still decided to leave knowing that, and not return knowing that. And so I knew I needed help. I knew I needed professional help. So I decided to book an appointment with my doctor. And I had a couple other health issues that I needed to address. So I booked an appointment with my doctor, who I just basically broke down and begged for help. But the really frustrating part is that it took months for any action to happen. And I realized quite how terrible the Ontario health system is, the health care in Ontario is, for those who are in desperate need of support. But thankfully I eventually ended up getting a couple of appointments. I got an assessment for my hair, a couple other assessments that I needed to get. And I started seeing my therapist again, and I got injections, thankfully got injections in my hair. But that took 6 months. Like, I was suffering for a good 6 months through that. But what kept me afloat was my friends, my support system. They're the reason I'm here. They're the absolute reason I'm here, is because, like, I wasn't working. My one friend said, you need to go to therapy. I'm paying for it. I don't care how much it costs. I'm paying for it. And so my friends showed up for me in ways that, I'm going to get a little choked up here.
I'm getting choked up. We all are.
Yeah. So my friends, they showed up for me in ways that I never ever expected from anyone to show up for me. They really, like, reached through the water and grabbed my hand and pulled me up. Yeah. And it was, yeah, I'll be eternally grateful to those people for that. But it became necessary for me to get the extra help outside of that immediate support network. And in addition to seeing my doctor and getting those other appointments, I got a psychiatric assessment, for which I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, and depression. And so I went on medication for the first time in my life. And that was a really tough pill to swallow, no pun intended. Because I had done the right things, quote unquote. I had worked out, I had eaten healthy, I had the social or the support network. I had all the right things that you need, that you're told that you need in order to get through a tough time, but it just wasn't working. And I, quote unquote, gave in, and I said, well, I had nothing left. I think when you have nothing left, when you're at absolute rock bottom, and this option is present for, like, I did speak to a bunch of people who said, this is an option for you, like really, really consider it, including my therapist. And then after the assessment, like I felt better. The psychiatrist actually was very helpful, and she offered a lot of care, which I think is really important when you're telling someone or you're assessing the mental health of someone. It's really important to have bedside manner. Mm-hmm. And she did. Thankfully she did, because I was scared. I was scared to go on this medication. Besides the fact that I tried to try not to put any sort of chemicals in my body, I didn't want to be on medication for the rest of my life. I didn't, there's so much stigma around medication. And, growing up, I'm sure the same is for you guys. You're crazy if you want on medication.
Oh, right? if you even have a therapist, you're crazy.
Yes, exactly.
I think it's interesting. I don't know that it's come up in conversations here, but it's a conversation that I have had with many friends, and like not wanting to be on something for the rest of their life, and have a family who it seems like everybody is on something. And I was very much like you. I refused to accept that I had postpartum depression because I was afraid they were going to put me on something.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's scary.
It is scary. But the reality is sometimes people need to be on something for the rest of their life. And if it gives you peace and a quality of life,
yes,
then it shouldn't be stigmatized. And
I agree.
And in a lot of cases, it's not for the rest of your life.
No, that's what people don't realize. Like when I was talking to my doctor, I said the same thing. I said, I don't want to go on this forever. And she said, you don't have to. She's like, you can be on this for a year. And I'm like, wait, what? Also, I don't think a lot of people know that this is something that is not a permanent, it doesn't have to be permanent.
No.
Exactly.
Sometimes you just need it to get through.
For me, it's interesting where I'm like, I'm better when I'm on it. So like I'm a better person.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have to, I'm like, well, that's, if that's what it needs to be, I've made my peace with it for sure.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm not looking for that to be the case, but if it is, and if that's how I get to be the best version of me,
mm-hmm.
And the best mom to my kids, then why I was making such a big deal out of it seems silly to me, frankly.
Agreed. And I feel the same way now. I remember starting to finally feel better, but my mood was still low. And so I was talking to my doctor and she was like, maybe we need to put you on a mood stabilizer. And I'm like, let's do it.
Yeah, at that point you're like, I'm already feeling a little better. So like, let's try more. Yeah, I can get that. I think it's interesting that you were still there, and because yes, you had all of these right things in place, and it sounds like you have an amazing community. And I choked up a little bit when you were talking about your community, because I too am very lucky to have an amazing support system that showed up for me when I like physically, like across the street, physically at my door, when I needed them. But even with all that, there are things that we go through in this life. And I just think of how it's almost like your whole existence was invalidated from that time when you were 3 years old and that boy called you a black lab.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. obviously that was the beginning of it all, because it all like adds up
and it builds up.
It builds up.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, with the medication and the support, like my friends, they showed up for me, like I said, in ways that I'll just never forget, short of like living with me and being around me. And I'm so grateful that your friends were there to be with you and to be present, like actually with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have this, like, my mind is completely changed about medication and about help. Like, why did I wait until I was suffering so much to get mental help, to get to mental support? You know, I just think that we really need to shift our minds around the stigma of all of it. Like, I mean, I know it's happening now, but it is, at least for people my age, it is ingrained in us that like you said, therapy is taboo, and support and help is taboo. But like, why is being better so taboo? Why is getting help to be better so taboo?
And why can't we just accept therapy for what it is? It's a place where you can basically talk shit about people if you want. Like you can say whatever is driving you crazy.
Yeah.
It can be as simple as that.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
It's your safe space to say whatever it is you need to say.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. It's your outlet, right? If at the end of the day, you get an outlet and you come back and you're happy with your partner and you're engaged with your friends, what does it matter?
Yeah.
What is you've had that outlet. You're not getting mad at the people that are in your life.
You're in a better mood. It's easier to get along with people. Like, why is that bad? But I think it's hard for people to make that jump. Like, I do have conversations with friends now. And I mean, we are living in a pandemic, so that's a whole other mental load that everyone is bearing. And most of my friends are parents, so virtual school and all of that. But I'll be like, maybe you should talk to somebody. Like, I can't help. I want to help you work through this, but I don't think I can.
Mm-hmm.
Like, really, I will listen, but I don't think I'm going to help you get to maybe what you need. And more often than not, it's like, oh yeah, I'll do that. It's like,
it's seen as such a last resort.
Yes.
Or, oh, I have to pay for it. It's like, and you're talking to
and
somebody.
That's the thing. Like, it, you know, it is cost prohibitive. And I think that's, you know, one of the things that got me when you were telling your story is that your friends offered to help pay for it.
That's amazing.
That's it's such a huge barrier for people.
Mm-hmm. And not that it's not, I don't want to invalidate that it's a barrier, because obviously, like, you either have enough money or you don't. But I also think that because so much is already covered, again, I'm coming from an American perspective. So to me, it's like, oh, I have to pay for that. Okay, that's fine. I'll pay for that. I don't have to pay for all this other stuff that I need to do. I think when you think about what the cost is, and I'm speaking strictly from most of the people I know in the middle class neighborhood I live in, they presumably could figure it out if they maybe ordered out less, or, you know what I mean? Like, most of the people I'm talking to on a regular basis, is it maybe a stumbling block? Could it be hard? Yes, but it's
a matter of prioritization.
But even when they can afford it, it's a last resort.
Yeah, it's still a last resort. Yeah.
And medication as well, right?
Yep.
Like, you're just supposed to make sure you get outside and exercise and meditate every day, and like get up and make your bed. Like, somehow that's going to change your life when like there's a whole thing around that.
You read about it.
I read about it. There is literally a book called Make Your Bed.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, and sure, there's something to that, but that is probably not going to be the difference maker when you're going through a hard time.
And not for everyone.
Right. Yeah. And I think Jen and I have talked about this before, just like, you have to find what works for you and what feels right for you. And if that means medication, then that is what works for you. Right. And what anybody else thinks about that is really, it's really none of their business.
Yeah, agreed. I was hesitant about telling one of my very best friends because I knew their reaction was going to be less than positive. And I told them, and through text, and the response was, and then that was really it. And I was like, oh, man, you know what? I'm going to fight to change this. I've got to fight to change this in every way that I can, because I don't want people to feel this way anymore. I don't want people to feel so disappointed by the people that they love because they're trying to get help for themselves. And it was similar to the reason I became involved in activism around human, animal, planet rights, because I didn't want people to feel a certain way around those things anymore. And so I've got my motivation again to to at least fight for that, the destigmatizing mental health issues and medication. So
It's, inspiring. That seems very trite, but it's not where I'm going. But it's just really inspiring that you could take, the experiences that you dealt with and lived through and clearly have carried with you to become an activist and to want for better. And even, it wouldn't surprise me if someone in your situation with the partner that you had who was, behaving and saying problematic things, maybe wouldn't call it out because it's kind of just like what it is.
Yeah.
But that you were still brave enough and strong enough and able to be like self-assured, like self-confident enough to do that. Like that, I don't know. Again, like it's interesting as you again are telling the condensed version of your story in this setting. Obviously you needed therapy. Obviously right. You needed some pharmaceutical support. Like obviously. We can't see that, but like from where I'm sitting, to me, that just seems like a given, because again, so much of who you are and who you have no control, what you have no control over who you are was like constantly just being bombarded.
Yeah. I thank you for saying that. I think for me that it wasn't necessarily strength. It was,
you did it though.
Yes, I did. But I think it was because what's going to make me, and I think I mentioned this to you before, what's going to make me more miserable, doing something or not doing something, saying something or not saying something.
Totally.
And those are kind of the rules that I live by these days, is like, if I see someone being attacked in the subway, which I did, a year and a half ago, what's going to make me more miserable, jumping in and stopping it, or just sitting there and ignoring it? Yeah. And it'll always be to do something and to say something, because I couldn't live with myself if something happened to that person on the subway and I had the opportunity to stop it. I couldn't live with myself if this person or my ex went on saying harmful things to other BIPOC, and I could have stopped it, or I could have at least said something to help her, think a different way. And like, not intending to try to trash my ex. That wasn't my intention.
No.
And she, we were together for a few years for a reason. But yeah, there are some problematic things. And I just think that, yeah, if I want to stop the cycle of things, if I want to stop the cycle of hurt, for me, I have to say something, or I have to do something. I have to be active in that healing, or that education, or that understanding. So.
And that is why I introduced you as somebody who lives their life with passion and integrity, because that's it right there, right? Like that's what you believe in, and you're going to use your voice or do what you can to break that cycle. And, just having conversations like this, I think are important, for people to listen to this and to hear the ways in which you've been impacted by racism. I think is important that we're having these conversations and talking about medication. Right?
Yes.
I have endometriosis. I take a medication for that every day.
Right.
And I will for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
Because if I don't, I'm in agonizing pain.
But it's a very concrete physical pain. So it's not.
Nobody would ever question that. Yeah. Nobody would ever say, well, you know, it's chemicals. I'm like, yeah, but like I literally can't move if I don't take it. And mental health is not really different.
Mm-mm.
You can also be in agonizing pain if you are not taking medication.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it's
you're
seen
so
differently.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jen, you pointed it out. Like it's the physical thing just makes it more palatable for people.
Yeah.
It's so crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope, one thing I hope that comes out of these kinds of conversations, and even that, like, I hope people are starting to see in this time, especially here in Ontario, of like the rolling lockdowns and everything, because there's this big push for our physical health with very little consideration to mental health, when it all is just overall health. And it's what contributes to a healthy person, but also a healthy society.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that, I think that's where we need to get, is where we see them just as health.
Yep.
And we don't separate it in physical or mental health, but like we need to get to a place where we just see it more holistic.
I mean,
right?
Like you're an example. You were physically healthy. Sounds like you take very good care of yourself. But you weren't okay inside.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It was definitely,
I mean, you're doing all the right things to take care of your physical health, but the mental health was just not at that time. So, I mean, it's very interesting going through everything that you've gone through, and it sounds like you had some amazing people showing up for you. It's not everyone has that. Not everybody knows the right thing to do when someone is struggling. What's some advice you could give to somebody either going through a hard time mentally, or that their friends could do to potentially support someone who's struggling?
Yeah. So what I would suggest for people struggling is, if you can find a support network, if you're lucky enough to have incredible friends who will care for you and just be there to listen. You know, they don't need to pay for your therapy by any means, because that's not going to be the case. But listening to you and really hearing you and hearing how you're suffering and being available, whether it's, hey, do you want someone to go to the doctor with you? I'll be here. I'll wait in the waiting room. And someone who doesn't, I can't stress this enough, don't play devil's advocate with someone who's suffering with their mental health. Don't play devil's advocate, because it's just so demoralizing. It's not helpful. And the devil is not someone you want to be an advocate with. But what I found really helpful for me when I was trying to build myself back up is, I had volunteered in the past, and it was life-changing for me. And so I had the opportunity, I had the time. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to invest. I'm going to, there's this organization that I've been following, and they are all about making positive change. And that's something I want to be able to invest in right now. And so I started volunteering for this organization called Start the Wave, who are an incredible organization focused on making positive change worldwide. And what was really helpful is that they are like-minded people. I can't tell you what a breath of fresh air it has been being around people who want to take anti-racism training, want to have crucial conversations, who want to look at the world from a decolonized lens, who want to participate in transformative justice, who know what microaggressions are. Or are super open to learning about it. Like, I can't express how important it is for one's mental health to surround yourself with people who are like-minded. because you don't have to do it forever, but until you get out of the rut, you have to be there. It just exacerbates your pain when you're constantly fighting more battles, when you're trying to get out of this hole, you know?
When you're constantly, your feelings or your experience is constantly being invalidated. It has to be exhausting.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, volunteering is not for everyone, but there are some good things about Facebook, unfortunately, and that's, you know, groups. I went on, there were a couple of groups that I had to be a part of, like during my suffering, which was, I went to BIPOC specific meetings, group meetings to talk about BIPOC experiences. I joined BIPOC specific groups on Facebook to talk about experiences. So I needed to be surrounded with like-minded people in order for me to be validated, like you were talking about, Jen. And I think that's really, really important for people who are suffering, is if you can find spaces where you are validated, where your feelings are validated, and you don't have to feel that stress and that pressure of not feeling like you belong, or that you don't fit in anymore.
Right. Or like you have to hold back to fit in.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And it didn't sound like you were being heard and seen in the way that you needed to be.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I definitely had voiced that to my therapist, that I wasn't being seen, and there are still days that, you know, I'm still not seen or heard, or, you know, that I wake up and I need to have my sunshine lamp on to get through it. But it's day by day. I take it day by day.
I just wanted to say, I think, and this is just something that came up listening to you, is I think because sometimes when you're in it, it can be hard to maybe seek those groups out. So what a friend could do is do that work for you.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, that's so perfect, Jen. Yeah. No, seriously, like when I was going through, when I visited my doctor, and I said there was that 3 months of time or whatever, there was a long waiting period, because they're like, okay, you've got to log on to this, you've got to go to this, you got to go to that. And when someone is at their end, they're not going to do any of that.
Nope.
And so to have someone be like, okay, I'm doing this for you, and we can call together, or I'll call for you, or whatever it is.
Yep.
To take that stress off them, that might not seem like a big deal,
yep,
is huge for someone who is struggling.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, great recommendation. Absolutely.
Thank you. I interrupted you though. You were about to say something else. I don't know if you lost it because of me.
I don't remember what I was going to say. But yeah, I think it was, just listen, don't play devil's advocate. That's the advice that I can say to people who want to support their friends. And like you said, just amazing. Yeah. Offer to do the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
For them.
Make it easy.
Yep. Yeah. Completely.
I liken it to like how Tesha would come and help me fold my laundry when I just couldn't get it done, you know?
Yep.
It's, that stuff that doesn't seem like anything and that anyone should be able to do, but there are days that you cannot. But so Start the Wave is the organization, and how can people find Start the Wave if they're interested in learning more?
So we have a website, www.startthewave.org, or we have an Instagram, Start the Wave account. Yep. We don't do Twitter anymore, so don't follow us on Twitter. We don't engage in that.
That's something else.
Yeah, but there's some really exciting things happening on Start the Wave right now. Over the next few months, like, we offer funding to people all around the world to either continue or to begin grassroots initiatives, and pretty incredible organization to be a part of. And like I said, they're all like-minded people, really interested in being better in every way, shape, and form. So yeah, check us out.
That's so amazing, Randi. Thank you so much for just sharing with us today and sharing your tips with us and letting us know. I think you gave us some really great advice today.
And thank you for just being really authentic and vulnerable and sharing your story. We really, really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Again, I'm really appreciative of having the platform to be able to share the story. And hopefully, someone out there hears it and feels connected to it and can get through their day a little easier because of it.
Absolutely. And we'll put some more resources in the show notes as well as information about Start the Wave.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Now What? If you've enjoyed this episode, leave us a review. Your ratings and reviews help more people like you find our podcast.
Don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with someone you think would love it. And make sure to find us on Instagram at nowwhat_podcast. Until next time, we're Tesha and Jen. Remember, your hard times are the chance to write another chapter.